Hello, everybody. On behalf of the National Career Development Association, welcome to today's webinar series. We are pleased that you have joined us. Before we get started, I want to share some technical information for you. During the webinar, your microphone will be muted. We encourage any questions to be typed into the chat section, which you guys have already been using. Our presenters will address those questions as we go, and then at the end of the webinar as well. Individuals who have signed up for the webinar can log into their account on the NCDA website to view their CEU transcripts beginning next week. Groups that are attending will need to return their sign-in sheets to me in order to receive their certificates. This program is approved for 1 contact hour of continuing education. For any questions that you may have about continuing education, you can contact me, Alicia Cheek, at NCDA headquarters. Our presenters today are Ronda Ansted and Sherry Mahaney. We now present Preventing and Transforming Career Burnout into Opportunity in the New Era of COVID-19.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alicia. Hello, everyone. I'm Sherry Mahaney, and I'm here today, as Alicia said, with my colleague, Ronda Ansted, to talk with you about the increasingly concerning issue of career burnout. With the rise of COVID-19, this has certainly accelerated this issue and brought it to so many people's attention. The way we do work has changed so much that people are seeing more clearly what doesn't work for them and that it isn't sustainable any longer. So this is why we think this topic is so important to address today. Ronda and I want to share some tools and techniques with you that will help both you and your clients now. So just to give you a little bit of background about me and why I'm interested in this topic, it's primarily because I personally have experienced the devastating effects of career burnout myself. It has changed the course of my life and my practice. 2 years ago, I was forced to walk away from my 25-year career as a higher ed counselor because I was totally mentally and physically depleted. It wasn't so much that the workload was overwhelming, but the environment I was working in was toxic for me, and I realized that I was burned out. So when I also realized through a conversation with a friend that I might be eligible to take early retirement from the university, I began planning to leave and create my own career consulting business, which is what I'm working on now. It took me 3 years to leave that job, but I was able to tolerate it just long enough to create a new plan because of the cognitive reframing and job crafting that I did. So those are two of the tools that Ronda and I will be sharing with you today, among others. So Ronda, if you want to chime in here, how about you maybe talk a little bit about what your experience with career burnout?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry, and I am so glad to be here. So my background before I got into the career profession, I was in international development and nonprofits. And these are 2 fields that have very high burnout. And so I not only experienced it myself, but saw so much with my colleagues. And one of the things that I realized is that burnout is not simply that there's a lot of work or a lot of, work and low pay. It's also about, are you doing work that you're good at? Are you going with your own grain? Are you going against your natural inclinations? And so for me, in my private practice, I mostly work with people in social impact fields. And so we work a lot on burnout prevention. So how do we set you up for a career so that you don't burn out? And in mission-driven organizations, this is something that even though we all know it's present and that this is can be really difficult for people in organizations, that there aren't really solid strategies on preventing burnout and or addressing it when it happens. So this is why Sherry and I decided to partner on this topic. It's just so relevant in my profession, but now we're seeing it in so many other areas as well.
Absolutely. So these are some of the takeaways, in addition to what you add to the chat box today, that Ronda and I are hoping that you will take away and be able to use with your clients. First of all, a better understanding of what career burnout is and its implications now in the era of COVID-19. We also want to talk about some new ways to address common career burnout myths that have been out there for a long time, as well as fears that happen in economic downturns that perpetuate this issue and tend to keep people stuck. We also want to expand your toolbox with reframing ideas, as well as talking about how job crafting can really make a difference for your clients during this time of social distancing. And ultimately, we also want to help you to be aware of an awesome online tool that Rhonda has created and developed called My Career Design Studio that you can use with your clients. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, let's talk broadly about what is happening with career burnout syndrome in our country. And what you're seeing here on the slide is a Gallup study, the results of a Gallup study that actually came out in April of this year, just about the time that COVID was really beginning to ramp up in the U.S., but had not really fully hit. And the results of this study left little doubt that employee burnout was already a symptom of modern workplaces. As you can see, of the employees that they surveyed in this study, 76% experienced burnout on the job at least sometimes. And of that 76%, 28% say that they are burned out very often or always at work. So there was already a real struggle going on here for people in the workplace before COVID hit. So one of the other things that's interesting about this was that you're going to hear a lot of the same kinds of things that you would be hearing now with COVID, in that these employees reported that at work they felt overwhelmed by competing demands and conflicting expectations, and that mobile technology was already blurring the lines between home and work life. Again, those are things that have continued, actually gotten worse since COVID has hit. One other interesting thing that this study revealed was that burnout is caused by having a bad manager, not by working long hours as it has long been believed. People who felt inspired and motivated and supported do more work. They just naturally want to work more because they're feeling engaged, and that work is significantly less stressful on their overall health and well-being. So now that we add COVID to that mix, those who are already experiencing burnout are forced to work from home, where they now have to create new work routines, juggle childcare, homeschooling, and in some cases take care of a sick family member. They're forced to primarily communicate with their manager via Zoom, text, and email, which increases the chances of miscommunication. And the line between their work and family lives is even more blurry than it was before, due to expectations that now that you're at home, you must always be available and can take on more work. And as a result, employees are really feeling a huge amount of stress, exhaustion, disengagement, and with the addition of COVID, it's really deepening their already existing burnout. I can also tell you that in my own practice in the last 8 months, I've been hearing a lot from my FCD students facilitating career development, the NCDA course that I teach, how their supervisors that were micromanagers before COVID are actually micromanaging even more, which is adding to their stress levels. So with COVID, those that are still working are feeling even more stressed and burned out. Now, on top of this, there are some myths and fears about burnout that are keeping people from acknowledging the symptoms and doing what they need to do to take care of themselves. So we're going to talk about that next. I want to stop, though, at the moment. Rhonda, was there something that came up in the chat that you wanted to mention, or is that just a response?
Nope. We're just, but this is the time to just remind people that please, as questions do come up, I am monitoring the chat, and I have permission to interrupt Sherry.
Yes.
So if something comes up that you want to know in the moment, please put that in the chat box, and I will make sure that the question's either answered then or at the end of our session.
Great. Thanks, Rhonda. Okay, so let's talk about some common expectations and myths that are out there about career burnout. This is the first one that both Rhonda and I have heard. I'm just overwhelmed by my job. Things will get better after X happens. So always, if there is one more thing, if I just get that thing accomplished, that I will feel better. And you often hear this from people who are confusing the difference between burnout and being overwhelmed. But when you do a reality check here and you look at the facts, the research shows that burnout is more generalized than situational. So if you're overwhelmed by a prolonged period, experiencing chronic fatigue and feeling ineffective in your job, then it's likely that you're burned out. And it's important for your clients to be able to acknowledge that that's what's happening and begin to address that, usually through some mental health counseling and then also some career planning. All right, the next myth. Being burned out requires me to make a major life or career change, and I just simply cannot do that right now. The fact is that not everyone who feels burned out needs to leave their job. They may just need to make some tweaks to make their current job fit better. And we're going to talk some more about this in a few minutes. But it's important for people to know that if they're already struggling in terms of energy, that leaving the job that they're in may be too difficult to do. So taking a look first at where they're at and what they could change is an important first step. So here's the third myth. I'm just feeling stressed because I need to get better at X. So that somehow the idea being that if they would just be able to improve their skills in a certain area, then they would be feeling less stress. The reality is that research shows that working at a job that fits your natural strengths is more effective than trying to change yourself to get better at the job that you're doing. So inefficacy is a sign of burnout, not incompetence. Again, what's important here is how long has this been going on? How long have they been feeling this? So if they are feeling ineffective on top of the classic symptoms of burnout, which are exhaustion and cynicism, then it's likely burnout. And so they need to be able to start addressing that and how it is that they can make some changes within themselves and or their situation to try to reduce their stress. Now, in addition to these myths about burnout, there's also some internalized fears that tend to keep people stuck that also happen whenever we hit an economic downturn. So I want to talk about those next, as well as how we can use reframing to effectively address those concerns.
So Sherry, I just want to come in for a moment and just say that that we are talking about this as ways that you can help your clients, and as Sherry and I can both attest that during this time, a lot of career professionals are feeling burnout as well.
Yes.
And so one of the things that even though we're talking about this in terms of how you can work with your clients, I also, both of us want to encourage you to think about, how can I use this myself? And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more explicitly later, but I encourage you to just come into this thinking in terms of, if I'm feeling burnout, there's some things I can do or some reframes that I can do. All right, sorry, just wanted to jump in.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Rhonda, because I know that we were thinking about that a lot as we were building this presentation. So absolutely, anything that we're talking about here that you might do with your clients, you definitely want to take care of yourself, and hopefully this will help you to recognize what it is that you might be able to do to help yourself as you're struggling perhaps with burnout. So when we think about some of the fears that people have, it's important to keep in mind that we all experience life through our own subjective lens, and we form perceptions based on whatever that subjective lens is, and that may or may not be totally true in every situation. We tend to generalize things. So reframing is a great way to help clients see what they are missing when they're evaluating a situation, and it can help motivate them to move forward, thus reducing their stress and anxiety. So Rhonda and I are assuming that most of you have used this technique before, but we were thinking that collectively, if we use the chat box and also share our ideas of how to reframe this, that it will actually help all of us to add more options for reframing some different kinds of fears as they come up with our clients or ourselves as we go forward. So what I would like for you to do is taking the fear that we have here on the left. If I leave this job now, the risks are so high, I could end up taking a pay cut, be forced to take a lower level job, or end up having to move. So take that fear, and in the chat box, share with all of us how you would reframe that fear so that we can then discuss it. And then what I will do, and also Rhonda, is we will add what our possible reframe ideas would be as well. So take a couple of minutes to add your ideas in the chat box. And make sure you click on all attendees so that everyone can see your response.
So as people are thinking about how they do some reframing, and again, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So it's not just you sitting and looking at a PowerPoint slide, but you can how do I work with this? One of the things that I do is have their fears, and then asking them what's the likelihood that that would happen. And so we ask them about worst case scenario, and then so is there a 100% chance that that will happen, or is it more like a 1 or 2% chance?
Right.
So that's one way that I help put fear into perspective.
Yes, and I would add to that, one of my favorite questions when I begin to hear some of these fears, or sometimes I see them as assumptions that clients are realizing that they are that they don't realize that they're making, is that I'll say, how do you know that? How do you know that those are exactly the things that are going to happen? And it gives them enough time to sort of stop for a second and think, well, based on maybe what I've read or I've seen that on TV, but they don't really know it based on some of the research. So it really helps us to kind of break those apart, each of those fears, into some separate components so that we can figure out, okay, based on what we've been talking about in terms of other possible jobs, would you need to take a pay cut? Or would you be forced to take a lower level job? Yes, probably if you left the field, but not necessarily if you were able to stay within the same field and work for a different employer, or even ending up having to move. Again, because technology now allows us to work from home, you may not have to move. There may be more options for you.
And that's what a lot of our participants are saying. And I love how some of this reframing is happening, because we're taking also the situation of COVID, that because there's been a widespread adoption of technology, then there are possibly more opportunities available now, because it doesn't have to be geographically limited. And then there's some reframing about, okay, so we've got the fear, but what happens if you do take this job? What happens if the best case scenario happens, that you're taking care of yourself You could end up in a job that you enjoy in a company where I can move up. And so start getting people to think about kind of the opportunity cost of staying where you're at, or what could actually happen if you do take this risk. And so kind of helping people to think about the potential and balancing that with the fear. And then we've got Carolyn, who said, and what if that did happen? What would that look like?
Right. Excellent.
And one of the things that I think is really helpful when you have people bring their fears up and make it more real instead of ambiguous, my life is going to fall apart forever. Like, okay, so if you took a pay cut, what would you do, or what would that look like? And or what can you do right now to help mitigate the bad things from happening and improve the odds of good things for happening? So it's both reframing and also creating some action items.
Yes.
So that there's a sense of agency, because fear makes you feel like you can't do anything. Once you start saying, well, okay, what I can do is not apply for jobs that are, below the salary that I'm taking right now. And so that will keep me from getting into a job where things are worse, and so on and so on.
Absolutely. And so those are really great reframes. This is the one that I came up with. Fear is a natural part of change. I think it's really important to acknowledge for people this is a fear. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lay this out so that you can actually name it and see it. And I may not have to give up everything I've worked for. I need to think about what is important to me now and explore the various options. So when I think about reframing, what I'm thinking about, I found that really helps people. I see just almost a visible relaxing when I say this to them is, you know what, you don't have to do anything right this instant. I mean, unless you've lost your job and you absolutely have to have another job right now, yes, it's painful where you're at, but nobody is saying you've got to do something right this instant. And that helps people to be able to take that step back and say, okay, I'm just going to research this. I'm just going to explore. I don't have to do something this instant with that. And it'll give me some time to think, which is an important piece. Great. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. This is a toughie. No one is going to hire someone my age. So what do you think about this question? How is it that you might help a client to reframe that?
And I want to say that this can refer to both too young or too old, right, Sherry?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. It really can become a vicious cycle of, I don't have what it takes, and I'm just assuming that nobody wants me, and it really creates an incredible spiral for people that really gets them stuck.
Yeah, I'm curious how other people respond to this, because this is like you said, this is a doozy. Like people really struggle with this, and I see a lack of reaching out because of this fear.
Right. What I find is that it's keeping people stuck in the same job, thinking that they need to do this, and in fact is a setup for them to become even more disengaged with the work and just say, fine, I'm going to ride it out until I can actually retire from here, which actually ends up having a cascading effect of negativity, particularly if they are, it doesn't matter actually, if they are either a staff member within a group or if they are the director of a group. it's amazing what kind of a negative impact that can have. So it can really get people stuck. I like what Kim is saying about being worried about your age, so you decided to journal about your worries. That's a great way to do it. Again, get it out there where you can see it and actually do something with it.
Yeah.
Great. Writing a list of qualities and talents that I bring to the table. Yep. Excellent.
And I think that's such a good point that when I'm working with clients, I help them to try to break down what is behind that concern, what is behind ageism. And I know that you're going to talk about that in a second, Sherry, but so if it is because they think you're going to retire soon, so if you're older, you're going to retire soon, so your longevity at the company is not going to be there for very long, or that you might cost too much, or that you're not as familiar with technology, then those, just kind of like what Kim is saying, those are the things that you want to focus on is how you overcome that, how you show your dedication towards working for the company, or how do you show your experience with technology. So exactly what Carolyn is saying. Tell me about your skills and experience that you bring, and so yeah, to really, and this can be actually very empowering to ground people in what they're good at and make that the focus.
Right. And this is again from a personal standpoint. That I even struggled with that where I was at, that, okay, I've kind of reached this point in my career. I was directing a program or an area, and just feeling at the same time like I had nothing to offer anybody else. So really taking that time to think about, wow, what is it that I do have to offer that could be a transferable skill? What is it that would, in fact, work? Again, thinking about, and it also helps when you're not thinking about it necessarily in general, but as you begin to also think about where would you ideally like to go? What would you like to be doing at this particular moment in your life? So I agree with Rhonda. That can be very empowering when you begin to realize it's not just about years of experience, but it's also about what kind of value you bring because of the knowledge that you've gained. And there's an awful lot of stuff that you've worked out as an older worker that would allow you to move into a new position and get up to speed much more quickly than someone who is new and just starting out as well.
So how do you reframe fear with your clients, Jerry?
So here's my reframe. That ageism does exist, again, acknowledging that's absolutely true. However, older people are finding encore careers. And this is an important thing to read about and research a bit, because I'm finding that whole topic very interesting because people are healthier and living longer. And as I did, able to retire from one career and move into another one that's in fact more fulfilling. And with my wealth of experience, I can focus more on what I want to do at this point in my career. Okay. Anything else in the chat box we need to add before we move forward?
Yeah, well, Linda's asking a question that I want to address later on.
Okay.
But I also just want to do a reframe for someone who feels like they can't get hired because they're too young. And so, again, I think that some of the things that can be really helpful are everybody started in a place where you're at, and a majority of people are going to have empathy for you. And so what you're looking for are those stepping stones to help you, and you will find a job because our employment structure is set up so that people, where you can learn on the job. You can't do that for everything. So, and this is a little bit what Linda's saying is if you want a 1 to 2 year plan before you leave an employer, think where you're going to be a few years from now,
Right.
and then think through the steps that you want that will take you there.
Absolutely. And I would agree that being able to begin to think about whether you're a younger worker or an older worker, what is it, you need to start your own sort of career exploration, similar to what you teach other people to do 1 to 2 years before you're ready to leave. Because I found that when I did that, as well as with people I work with, that if I have them doing that, it actually creates some relief, because they begin to realize, okay, I'm not just going out into the unknown, I am moving towards something, not just away from something. And that's a really important idea to keep in mind. Okay. So another way to reframe in general as a career coach or advisor is to help your client to think about not just job search, but possibly doing job crafting. So right now, the fear of leaving a job that you know, for one you don't know, similar to what I was talking about, is a very real issue for our clients. And it's hard because you want to try to encourage them, but at the same time, they have no idea, where am I going to go, because it feels like no one's hiring. So the impact of COVID on the economy could, in fact, take a while for them to find just the right job, depending on when openings happen. So to help your clients regain, regardless of whether they decide to stay or to leave, shifting your approach to job crafting can help them to reframe their situation and feel more engaged in their work. It'll also reduce their stress and increase their sense of control over their current situation. So let me change slides here. Let's talk about what the job crafting approach involves. So some of the advantages of job crafting are that clients don't have to spend a lot of time searching through job boards, which can be very, very defeating. It's very much focused, as Rhonda was talking about earlier, focused more on what you want to do next rather than what you can do, which again can be very defeating. It's something that leverages your own natural strengths, values, personality, and abilities, and really helps to support the kind of life that you want to live, as opposed to just trying to fit into what jobs are out there and available for you. So it's a lot less time and effort to make your job better where you're at right now versus trying to find a new one in the midst of COVID. So it's something that you can be doing in that 1 to 2 years before you leave an employer. And what it's very much about is really sitting down and figuring out, what is it that I could do in my current job? Where do I have some leeway? Where is it that if I have a micromanaging boss, where are some areas? They usually are not micromanaging across the board from what I found. They micromanage in certain kinds of ways. So figuring out where, in fact, you do have some leeway. So, for instance, I had a client who was saying to me that my boss micromanages our calendars. They'll spend hours every week picking through, what is this appointment? What is that appointment for? Why are you blocking off time to do project work and so forth? And so she was saying to me, as if, again, it was an absolute, I absolutely have no time to be able to do anything in terms of working on my projects because I'm expected to see clients. There's absolutely no time in my calendar to even think about shifting jobs or maybe having coffee with someone or whatever have you. But in fact, the more we began to talk, the more she realized that she does have these little small pockets that her boss does not question. And so I said, it's rather than looking for these huge blocks, what could you do with some of those smaller spaces to help that feel like you're moving forward in some way? And so it's really looking at your current job, because one of the things that your employer cannot control is your own personal style in terms of how you actually do the job itself. That ultimately figuring out how you might be able to infuse some of your own natural strengths into that will really help you to begin to feel like, okay, I have some control here and I can feel more engaged with the work because it's something that fits me better and I enjoy doing it in some way. So it is a creative process of trying to figure out. But chances are, if you spend some time even doing the exercise of writing down what you do each day for a week and then going back and looking at that, you can begin to find some places where you might be able to have some latitude and to make some changes to help you with the job you're doing day to day. Anything you want to add to that, Rhonda, at this point?
I think, I think that this is one of the strategies to answer Linda's question is, how to manage burnout when you can't leave right away. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I just wanted to differentiate is that this is even useful when you're in toxic environments. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to minimize, because sometimes, you're just, your coworkers are antagonistic, your boss is actively undermining you. I mean, I have worked with so many people where their situations are so demoralizing. Mm-hmm. And by going through this process and finding just little incremental shifts that they can do, well, can you find someone to do this piece so that you can do more of that? Mm-hmm. And that making those adjustments can often be enough to free up both that psychic energy and just, plain old energy that you need to actually leave. Mm-hmm. So I think that job crafting, I almost use job crafting and job search with a lot of my clients. We start where you are. How do we make things better now so mm-hmm. that you can make good decisions in the future?
Right. Because if you don't free up some energy now, if you're feeling so burned out that you can't move forward, then you're not going to be able to accomplish moving out of that job into something that you would really love. It's not like you all of a sudden having to do that after you leave the job can be just as stressful in the long run in doing that. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do is to talk a little bit about this really cool tool that Rhonda has created and developed, because it really focuses on how it is that we can help clients to determine what kind of job will support the life that they want to live. And so I'm going to turn it over to her so she can walk you through it, but it's something that, again, what we were talking about earlier, is something that you can be using yourself as well as with your clients, and it's a great supplemental tool to the advising that you're doing with clients, or you can use it as a standalone, either one. So I'll turn it over to you, Rhonda, and I just wanted to let Alicia know we'd like to switch the presenter.
She's our main presenter. She is on the ball.
Oh, she is. All right. Wonderful.
All right. So, so like Sherry said, I created an online product program called My Career Design Studio, really to help prevent burnout. And so this was really geared, again, towards my social impact clients. And then I realized, actually, this is useful for a lot of different kinds of people. And so one of the things that that this helps with, as far as the job crafting that Sherry was just talking about, is that the whole process of figuring out what you want to do is very, very overwhelming. So My Career Design Studio breaks it down into kind of these bite-sized pieces. So if you've got little chunks of time, then you can just take an activity and finish something in 15 minutes, and then, and feel like you're making progress towards your goals. And the other thing that this does is it really starts with who you are and what you want. And so there is a built-in career assessment, although you can also, if you work with your client and you have them do a Myers-Briggs or strong interest code inventory, you can add those in and or have them do the assessment. but then it gives you not only the results of, okay, so for example, I'm an INFP, but then this helps them to kind of customize what is it about an INFP that really resonates for me. And so, so it helps people to think through, what kind of workplace do I want? So that's what the program calls Career Design Essentials. And so then you just select the ones that are most important to you. And so this starts moving you towards the, this is what I want to do, rather than this is what I can do. It also then really gives you a list of strengths and challenges that are common for people within those types. So again, when people are asked, what are your strengths? So to help people reframe the ageism question, then they don't have to start with a blank slate. For every activity here, then you can see what people like you typically say, and then choose the things that are relevant for you. And then work context, work style, and work abilities, these all come from the ONET database. And so this helps people, again, with transferable skills, with just really being able to kind of transform the attitude of, I don't know what I'm good at, or I'm not good at anything, right? Because burnout often gives you a sense of inefficacy, and you feel like you're not good at anything. Well, this helps to counterbalance. And same thing with the interest results. And so people who are more social have these kinds of strengths, and then the program collects them. And so then you can end up very quickly with a really long list of what you're good at. And so this has, and then this for you as a career professional is really useful to help them frame, okay, your strengths. You want your work to utilize your strengths more than your challenges, and minimize your challenges when you're working in the kind of job that you're doing. So for example, I will own that I am a disorganized person, and I can be really bad about following through with important details. So one of the things that I did was I was a program manager for an both an internet company and an international development agency, and that basically required that I was organized and follow through with everything. I could do it, but it was really, really hard, and it did not take long for me to get burnt out. So when I started thinking through that, then I was able to develop something that fit me better. A few more things that I think that this can be really helpful. We were talking about planning into the future. And so, so there's an activity called My Life Map, where you think through, okay, not only how did I get to where I want to be, where I am right now, but you can also plan your future. So if you want to go back and get a graduate degree, thinking through when you want to do that and the steps that it's going to take to get you there. The other thing that's really important is to go through a process of thinking through, what does a balanced life look like to me? Because it's different for every single person. I kind of force people to start with how much sleep you need, and as well as the things that are most important to you, and then see where work fits in with all of that. This can be a very eye-opening activity where people see that either their life is really out of balance, or that they're trying to fit everything into a 24-hour day and looking to see what actually gives. Or that their ideal day, they want to be working on a project, and instead they're spending a lot of time on the internet or watching TV. And so this helps give them clarity about what they want to do. And I know that we're getting close to the end of our time, so I just wanted to say a few more things that that there's another section called the napkin sketch, which that takes everything that you have selected is relevant for you and then asks you to prioritize them. So very similar to the balanced day where you think through what's most important to you. And so we've got have to haves, nice to haves, and then icing on the cake. That's what these little acronyms mean. And for the have to haves, you can only select 5. So you have to be really careful or really intentional about what you want to do. But this process refocuses people so completely on how they want to craft their current job and what kind of job do they want to do next. One last thing that I want to show is that, this has all been based on positive psychology research and career development best practices. And so it also includes little mini activities called the Art Critic. So this is when you start criticizing yourself. And it gives you little activities to help you when you are feeling exhausted. So one of the things I try to do is if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I'll just come here and choose one of these. And this is just kind of like a little guided meditation, relaxing into safety, and then that helps to rejuvenate me. So basically, that's what my career design studio can do for you and your clients. And what I want to do now. So again, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box. But I want to just give a few ideas of what you can do to help take care of yourself. And this is something that you can share with your clients, but we are best when we model what works. And so if you're stressed out and overwhelmed, then that's going to reflect in how you work with your clients. So this is, the whole airline, put your safety mask on first before you help anybody else out. So just a couple of things of if you're making changes, start with something small, start with something that's easy. And a lot of these, create a list of your gifts. Like that is something that you could actually even pull from my career design studio to think about what gives you joy and how can you increase the amount of joy in your life 1 minute a day. So that's one of the things that I want you to think about. I use a process of daily planning and learning where I don't do it every day, so I just have to own that. But when I use it, my days go so much better. And so I choose the 5 most important things for me to do today instead of a long list of 35 things that I think I should do today. And then think through what are some things that I can do to make my day go smooth, help rejuvenate me, and or things that I'm grateful for. So those questions get me in a mindset that help me what's important and take care of myself. And at the end of the day, 2 questions: what went well? What did I learn? So as we move into questions, I want to start with a question for you. Is what is one thing that you can do tomorrow that will help you decrease your own sense of burnout? And I definitely want to invite people to share what that is so that we can inspire each other. And Sherry, I want you to think of that too. What's one thing that you can do tomorrow that will help rejuvenate and refresh you? And And then as you're thinking about that, then that gives us a chance to just take a look at the chat and see what questions are here. A day off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. That's one of those easy things that's really, really hard to do. Simple but difficult.
Yes. I would add that being online all day, that we think that just because we're home, that somehow what happens, I see this with my own husband, is that he'll plan to take a day off, and then because he hasn't planned anything to do during that day to get away from the desk, then he tends to end up right back there. So really important that you take that day off and have some ideas of what you could do away from your desk that would help rejuvenate you.
I recommend that when you take something away, especially if it's a bad habit, you try to replace it with something that's positive. So whether that's, instead of sitting at the computer, I take a walk.
Yeah.
I really like David's comment, talk it out with someone, because that also, especially right now when there's so much isolation, any kind of connection that you can make, asking for help, giving people an opportunity to help you or just be a sounding board is useful on so many different levels.
Yes. And, one thing that I've discovered sometimes in keeping it simple that helped me with the whole being able to connect with someone is just I have camp chairs that I keep in the back of my car, and I've been meeting some friends so that we're 6 feet apart, sometimes with our masks on, depends on what's going on around us, but we really try to meet in a park or someplace and just have coffee so that we can actually talk in person. And that makes a huge difference in how you feel. Even if you can't be close to someone, you can't hug them or whatever, it's a way to help make a connection.
Yeah. One thing that I want to, so Mary's making some really good points. And one thing that she said is that, taking a day off, then things pile up and then that adds stress later. I'm kind of reading into this.
Yeah.
And so again, start with what's small, start with what's easy. So if actually taking a day off increases your stress, or, the anticipation of that increases your stress, then where can you take 15 minutes to do something that you love? And especially something that incorporates movement, because that gets the blood flowing, and that's really healthy for us. So taking a walk is really good. But if you like to dance, put on your favorite song. If you've got animals, play with them and make a cat chase a laser pointer. And so that's what I want you to think about is instead of medium-sized or large goals, what are little micro goals that you can set? Something that will take, again, 5 to 15 minutes where you feel good afterwards. And and one thing that Mary's also bringing up that we didn't really talk about, although it's kind of integral in this concept of burnout, is this concept of boundaries. And for me, I see that as being clear about what you want today, what you want, what are your life goals, so that you can make decisions. If someone is asking for help from you, for example, if someone wants to talk it out for you and you're feeling overwhelmed, then to remember, what am I working toward? And if you're working toward rest and relaxation, and this would stress you out, and to give yourself permission to say, let's talk later. And so we could do a whole other session on boundaries.
Yes.
But those are important or crucial in burnout. But I don't think it's enough just to have boundaries. I think you also need to know what you're moving toward.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So let me just ask, so we're right at the edge of time here. Are there any questions? I'm just going to scroll through chat. But if there's any other questions that we haven't answered or that you'd like us to share with you, please put that in the chat box.
Great.
Okay, so Linda, I'm hoping that, you know, you were asking about how to stay motivated and creative during COVID. And I know that we didn't talk a whole lot, especially around the creativity component.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think that my response to that would be to think about what brings you joy and find a way to work that into your week, into your day.
Mm-hmm. And Mary's asking, I mean, this is a really difficult sort of question, is, you know, how do we address the systemic racism affecting our country as it relates to personal burnout and professional burnout? I do think that's a whole nother presentation, but I absolutely agree with you that it does have an impact on our sense of burnout personally and professionally. This is a really tough time for people to be practicing in. Their clients are going through so much, and at the same time, they themselves are going through so much. And I wish I had an easy answer to that, but I think that it's probably a whole nother topic to cover.
Yeah. And, you know, this question about the systemic racism that's affecting our country right now. And I mean, I think that that it's useful for us to be clear about what we can do and to do those things. And there's a lot of things that our country needs to do. But as far as what as individuals we can do, I struggle with this a lot. And so I will ask myself, you know, who can I give money to? What kind of activity can I contribute to? And then go from there. Again, that's another hour at least of conversation. So we're not going to tackle systemic racism, although I'm willing to do that, you guys, if we want to keep going for another hour. No, okay, I'm getting the head shakes. Okay. And David, just to respond to your question, with my career design studio, if you're interested in learning more about that, please email me. I can either, you know, send you a video or do a demo with you. It's, you know, again, it's something that I created to use with my clients, but it is something that is available to anyone to use. And so my email, Ronda, no H, at BeTheChangeCareers.com. Just send me an email and I'd be happy to talk to you about it more. So, and then one last thing, Kim was talking about being authentic in our relationships and our conversations with our colleagues, and I think that there's so much talent and great ideas, you know, when the people in this webinar, and that's why Sherry and I wanted you to participate in this, is so that we can learn from each other. And yeah, I think that authentic relationships, feeling cared for and caring others, I think that goes a long way to preventing burnout and addressing it, feeling a part of, feeling connected and a part of something bigger.
Yeah, I would say that, in fact, is part of the way in which I did some job crafting in my previous job, as I figured out who it was that I felt I could be more authentic with, or what groups that I was working with that I could be more authentic with, and that really helped, so that I wasn't just doing the standard answers and, you know, just what was required of me in terms of response. Okay. So I don't know what your post-nominal letters mean. Are you talking about for Ronda? Oh, okay.
So DMGT, so I'm a Doctorate of Management, and so MSW, Master of Social Work. RPCB, that's a little bit not necessarily tongue-in-cheek, but that's a Return Peace Corps volunteer. And so I work with a lot of Return Peace Corps volunteers, so I like to identify myself as one of them.
And if you're not familiar with mine is the National Certified Counselor, which is one of the certifications. And then the other two certifications are through NCDA, which you can check out on their website, because I know we are running out of time. So thank you all so much for coming today, and we really enjoyed talking with you, and please be safe and well out there. You're doing great work.
Yes, absolutely. And please implement your little idea about the one thing that you can do tomorrow.
Yes.
And again, let's make that commitment, model that for our clients, and let's make our days just a little bit better.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sherry and Rhonda. And to all our attendees, I will be sending out the recording link. This webinar was recorded, so you'll get the link to the recording, as well as a PDF of their PowerPoint presentations that you have all that information for you. So thank you again to Sherry and Rhonda, and we will talk to everybody later.